History was written by men, kings, conquerors, emperors, but hidden beneath the pages of history there were women so terrifying. Entire armies feared hearing their names. Women who rode directly into battle while kingdoms burned around them. Women who slaughtered invaders, crushed rebellions, manipulated empires, and ruled through fear so powerful, their enemies compared them to demons. Some became legends, some became monsters, and some were erased from history completely. Tonight, we uncover the most feared warrior queens in human history. But this is not the fairy tale version. This is the brutal truth, the blood, the betrayals, the revenge, and the terrifying power these women held over the ancient world. Because once you hear their stories, you'll understand something chilling. Sometimes, the deadliest ruler in the room was the Queen. Part 1. Boudicca, the woman who turned Britain into hell. 60 AD, Roman Britain. The Roman Empire believed itself unstoppable. Their legions had crushed civilizations across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roads stretched across continents. Roman law ruled millions. To Rome, Britain was just another conquered land. But Rome made one mistake, one catastrophic mistake. They humiliated a queen. After the death of King Prasutagus of the Iceni tribe, Roman officials seized control of his kingdom. They publicly flogged his wife, Queen Boudicca, then assaulted her daughters in front of their people. Rome thought terror would create obedience. Instead, they awakened fury. Ancient historians described Boudicca as almost supernatural, tall, terrifying, with long red hair cascading down her body, a harsh voice, piercing eyes, and a presence so intense. Men trembled when she spoke. She gathered tribes from across Britain, enemies united for one purpose: destroy Rome. And suddenly, Britain exploded. Roman settlements were wiped out one by one. Camulodunum burned first. The Roman temple there became a death trap. People inside begged for mercy. None came. Then Londinium, modern-day London. Roman officials abandoned the city as Boudicca's forces approached. What followed was pure carnage. Ancient writers claimed roads were covered with corpses, homes burned for days, men, women, collaborators, slaughtered. Some historians estimate over 70,000 people died during her rebellion. And the worst part? Rome was terrified, because for the first time in years, the empire looked weak. Roman governor Suetonius knew if Boudicca won again, Britain might be lost forever, so he prepared for one final battle. The Romans were massively outnumbered, but Roman discipline was deadly. The legions formed shield walls, spears flew, the Britons charged screaming into battle, then the Romans advanced slowly, methodically, like a machine. Bodies piled up everywhere, war chariots overturned, families trapped behind retreating warriors were crushed beneath chaos. The rebellion collapsed. Ancient accounts say Boudicca poisoned herself to avoid capture. Others claim she died from illness shortly afterward, but Rome never forgot her, because one woman came terrifyingly close to destroying the Roman Empire in Britain forever. Part 2. Tomyris, the queen who killed the world's greatest conqueror. Long before Alexander the Great, there was Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire, one of history's greatest conquerors. He defeated kingdoms so quickly, many believed he was unstoppable, until he encountered Queen Tomyris, ruler of the Massagetæ, a fierce nomadic warrior civilization from Central Asia. Unlike many rulers, Tomyris feared no empire. Cyrus first attempted diplomacy, or at least something disguised as diplomacy. He proposed marriage. But it wasn't love. It was conquest disguised as romance. Tomyris rejected him immediately, humiliated. Cyrus chose war. But Cyrus didn't attack directly. He used deception. The Persians abandoned a camp filled with food and wine. The Massagetæ were unfamiliar with strong alcohol. Tomyris' son led a raid on the camp. The warriors celebrated, drank heavily. Then Persian soldiers returned. The Massagetæ were massacred while intoxicated. Her son was captured alive. Unable to bear the humiliation, he ended his own life. Tomyris became consumed with rage. She sent Cyrus a warning. Give me back my son and leave my lands, or I swear I will give you your fill of blood." Cyrus ignored her. It would become the worst mistake of his life. The final battle was catastrophic. Ancient writers described rivers of blood across the battlefield. The Massagetae fought like wild animals. Persian soldiers were slaughtered in huge numbers. And then Cyrus the Great died, the conqueror of empires, killed in battle against a queen. But Tomyris wasn't finished. According to legend, she found his corpse after the battle, cut off his head, then plunged it into a container filled with blood and said, "You thirsted for blood, now drink your fill." One of history's greatest rulers ended by one of history's most terrifying queens. Part 3, Zenobia, the woman who almost split Rome in half 3rd century AD. Rome was collapsing from within. Civil wars, economic disaster, assassinations, barbarian invasions. The empire was weak, and one woman saw opportunity. Queen Zenobia of Palmyra, beautiful, highly educated, fluent in multiple languages, but beneath the elegance was ruthless ambition. Her husband ruled Palmyra, a wealthy city controlling important trade routes, but after his assassination, Zenobia seized power and immediately began expanding. Egypt fell to her armies, then Syria, then huge sections of Asia Minor. She built an empire right under Rome's nose, and she wanted more. Zenobia openly challenged Roman authority. Coins carried her image. She claimed descent from Cleopatra. She styled herself as Empress. Rome became furious. Emperor Aurelian marched east personally to crush her rebellion, but Zenobia refused surrender. Ancient writers claimed she rode horseback beside soldiers for days without exhaustion. She wore armor, led troops directly, and inspired fanatical loyalty. Battle after battle erupted across the east. Eventually Rome cornered her forces. Zenobia attempted escape into Persia, but Roman cavalry captured her near the Euphrates River. Her fate remains mysterious. Some say she starved herself. Others claim Aurelian spared her because he admired her courage. But regardless of how she died, for one terrifying moment, one woman nearly shattered the Roman Empire. Part 4. Nzinga, the African queen who defied Europe for 40 years 17th century Africa. European colonizers expanded aggressively across the continent. Kingdoms fell one after another, but one queen refused submission. Queen Nzinga, ruler of Ndongo and Matamba, a woman so intelligent, even her enemies admired her. Nzinga understood warfare, but more importantly, she understood psychology. During negotiations with Portuguese officials, they intentionally provided no chair for her. It was meant to humiliate her, to force her beneath them. Nzinga responded instantly. She ordered a servant onto the floor and sat on their back like a throne. The Portuguese understood immediately. This woman would never bow. Nzinga mastered diplomacy, espionage, guerrilla warfare, and manipulation. She formed alliances with rival tribes, welcomed escaped slaves into her armies, used ambush tactics constantly, and fought Portuguese expansion for decades. The Portuguese considered her one of their most dangerous enemies in Africa. She survived betrayals, civil wars, assassination attempts, and somehow kept winning. Even in old age, she remained feared. Because Nzinga understood something terrifying: empires can be beaten if you refuse to kneel. Part 5. Fu Hao, the Bronze Axe Queen of Ancient China, 1200 BC. Ancient China. Most royal women lived inside palaces, but Fu Hao became something completely different. A general, a conqueror, a warrior queen. She served during the Shang dynasty under King Wu Ding, and unlike symbolic queens, Fu Hao personally commanded armies, huge armies. Oracle bone inscriptions describe campaigns involving over 13,000 troops, massive for the time period. She led invasions against rival tribes, crushed enemies repeatedly, expanded Shang territory, and became one of the earliest recorded female military commanders in history. But Fu Hao wasn't just a warrior. She was also a priestess, a spiritual figure connected to divine rituals, meaning soldiers believed heaven itself protected her. Imagine fighting an army led by someone believed chosen by the gods. When she died, she received an extraordinary burial: weapons, treasures, battle axes, armor, hundreds of artifacts buried beside her. Her tomb remained untouched for over 3,000 years, and when archaeologists finally opened it, they discovered proof that this queen truly fought in war. Not myth, not legend, reality. Part 6. The Trung Sisters, the elephant-riding queens of Vietnam 40 AD. China ruled Vietnam brutally. Heavy taxation, forced labor, executions, fear dominated everyday life. Then Chinese officials executed the husband of Trung Trac, and something snapped. Together with her sister Trung Nhi, she launched a rebellion. What happened next shocked China completely. Cities fell rapidly, Chinese governors fled, local populations joined the uprising in huge numbers. Within months, the sisters controlled dozens of cities. Vietnam declared independence. Ancient legends say the sisters rode war elephants into battle wearing golden armor. Imagine witnessing armored elephants charging directly toward you, led by warrior queens. For 3 years, they ruled independently, but China eventually returned with a massive military force. The final battles were devastating. Rather than surrender, legend says the sisters ended their own lives by jumping into a river. Today, they remain national heroes in Vietnam, symbols of resistance against impossible odds. Part 7. Cleopatra, the queen who almost controlled Rome. Most people misunderstand Cleopatra. History reduced her to beauty, seduction, romance. But her true weapon was intelligence. Cleopatra spoke multiple languages, understood economics, military strategy, politics, manipulation, and she used all of it masterfully. First came Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony. Through alliances with Rome's most powerful men, Cleopatra transformed Egypt into a dangerous political force, and Rome feared her deeply, especially after Antony granted eastern territories to Cleopatra's children. To Roman politicians, it looked like Cleopatra was building an empire to rival Rome itself. War became inevitable. The final conflict exploded at the Battle of Actium, a massive naval confrontation. Antony and Cleopatra lost. Rome closed in. Antony took his own life after hearing false news of Cleopatra's death. And Cleopatra faced a terrible choice: humiliation in Rome or death. According to legend, she chose death by asp's snake, ending not just her life, but the final chapter of ancient Egypt itself. Rome conquered Egypt permanently afterward, but the terrifying truth remains: for years, Cleopatra manipulated the most powerful empire on earth. Part 8. Ranavalona, the Mad Queen of Madagascar, 19th century Madagascar. Queen Ranavalona ruled through absolute terror. She believed fear maintained power, and she ruled with iron brutality. Executions became common. Suspicion alone could mean death. One horrifying method was trial by poison. Accused individuals consumed toxic nuts. If they survived, they were innocent. If they died, they were guilty. Thousands perished under her reign. European observers called her the Mad Queen. But Ranavalona viewed herself differently: protector of Madagascar, defender against foreign control. She isolated her kingdom from European influence aggressively. Missionaries were expelled, foreign powers resisted, and despite her brutality, Madagascar remained independent during a time many African kingdoms fell under colonial rule. Her methods were horrifying, but effective. The dark truth about warrior queens. History often romanticizes warrior queens, but reality was savage. These women lived in worlds where weakness meant death. Mercy could destroy kingdoms. Compassion could invite invasion. To survive, they often became more ruthless than the men surrounding them. Some burned cities, some executed enemies publicly, some manipulated empires through fear and strategy, and many were erased or minimized afterward, because history was usually written by men uncomfortable admitting they had been defeated, outsmarted, or terrified by women. But history leaves scars, and fear creates legends. That's why we still remember these queens centuries later, because ordinary rulers fade away. But terrifying rulers become immortal. Empires rise, empires collapse, kings vanish into dust, but some names never disappear. Boudicca, Tomyris, Zenobia, Nzinga, Fu Hao, the Trung sisters, Cleopatra, Ranavalona. Women who stood against impossible odds and chose war instead of surrender. And maybe the most terrifying part is realizing how close some of them came to changing history forever. Because the ancient world feared many things: barbarian invasions, plagues, famine, collapse. But sometimes, what terrified empires most was a queen with nothing left to lose. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more dark, untold history. Because history is far more brutal than fiction.